Now, back to Stoney and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
It's one of the reasons Buster Posey acquired the best defensive first baseman in baseball. Those kind of plays. Heads up.
Well, he's really a third baseman playing first base.
Well, stick him in a corner. He'll be fine.
That was a nice play, though.
It was.
Fancy footwork there from Molly.
Molly and Hauser.
What about him? You don't like him?
Well, when you have two guys who are part of a five-man rotation and they take turns pitching poorly, it's going to be tough to put together win streaks.
Well, you can't walk guys.
Not that team.
Any team.
Okay.
You cannot give out free passes at the rate that, well, I'll say Molly does. Hauser's not terrible. But the number I was going to throw at you before the break was 17.
17.
Yeah, that is the major.
No, they've only lost 16.
It's the amount of walks that Molly has issued this season.
Okay.
It's the number one number in the major leagues. Like, you just take a look at that. Was it the sixth inning that got blown up?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to start with Trey Turner. Counts 2-0. And he, seeing eye single, infield single. Tough play for Adames. Next batter, 3-1, walk Schwarber. Next batter, Harper, 1-0 count, RBI double to left field. Next batter, 1-0 count, Adolis Garcia double to right center. What's the one thing in common in all four of those at-bats?
Sounds like he's fallen behind guys.
Yes. He either walks guys or doesn't get ahead. And when you throw 93, like last year actually with the Texas Rangers, he was pretty good. He didn't walk a ton of guys. And this year, he does not work in the strike zone. And that's where we were talking about in the first segment, why the Giants' offense has struggled a lot is because they don't do damage on pitches in the zone enough for pitchers to not have to respect them. Meanwhile, it feels like there's a lot of pitchers on the Giants staff that opposing offenses don't really have to respect that much because Molly's got a nip. He's got to use junk. And so far this season, he's been walking a ton of guys, and those have come back to bite him.
Yeah, 888-957-9570 is the number. And this is kind of also what the fallout from the start of this year, too, to me is if we were not happy with the way Melvin managed this team, I think the way this season has started has taken some of the focus off Tony Vitello. It's almost as though, if you're a Giants fan, you realize this team may not be as good as you thought it was. And if that's the case, then how much can you blame Tony Vitello for what's going on? Probably not a lot.
Well, I think the bigger question is, are you still blaming Bob Melvin for what went on last year? All I heard last season is Melvin's lost the clubhouse. Melvin can't figure out how to get this team above 500. Melvin's the reason why this team is sinking. Melvin doesn't have what it takes to be a good big league manager anymore. Okay, well, I don't think that it's Tony Vitello's fault. I think this is also proving it wasn't Bob Melvin's fault. I think you got to look higher, and you got to look in that clubhouse. Why can't Devers hit? Has anybody talked to Rafael Devers this month? Has anybody talked to Rafael Devers this season? Because right now, this guy is one of the least valuable players in Major League Baseball. And you acquired $300 million. That's a problem. This isn't like the Jimmy Butler deal where he came in and you kind of took off a bit, but you didn't reach your potential. And then he got hurt and, you kind of just have to eat the rest of the contract. No, you got Rafael Devers for 8 more years, and the returns have not been good. He was individually solid the last 2 months of last season. Outside of that, he has not had a moment or a stretch that makes you feel like the trade acquisition is going to turn out in your favor. That was something that was a good move at the time. I'm not saying that it was a move that I wouldn't make because the Giants needed some sort of juice, but that trade so far has fallen completely on its face. And Devers right now, I don't know if he can hit a fastball. Seriously.
I forget who said it, but that's a problem. This is Tony Vitello on Luzardo last night.
I was just talking with Frank in here about it. I mean, to be honest with you, he was up, down, and he was in, and he was out. And, easy 95 miles an hour, but he's getting guys to chase down. And I don't know that there was one thing in there in particular that either left-handers or right-handers could have covered. Of course, our guys are sitting on stuff at certain occasions, and the report and all that's given, but he was pretty good tonight.
That was Tony Vitello talking about Jesus Luzardo. And, the other thing is, yes, the Giants had won 3 straight series coming into this one. They were, let's say, slow turning around their season. But the reality is the numbers for the entire season are what's alarming. Not necessarily just yesterday's loss. It's the fact that they've had 6 losses like that where they haven't scored. They're the lowest scoring team in the league. And how do you make up for that if, your pitching isn't lights out? The only thing that they can do right now is the guys they have to play better. It's really that simple. And, this is where, to me, it is like fantasy baseball. And I hear a lot of people say, well, you can't take Devers out of the lineup because he's going to hit at some point, right? I mean, and you don't want to miss that. You have to live with this guy because he's such an important player for you.
Well, you want him to be an important player. You need him to be an important player. But he's not. And he's been hurting you so far this season.
So what do you do?
What do you do?
I mean,
you got to stick with him.
Give him a day off. Okay, give him a day off. Big deal. Right. There's there are no decisions to be made with Adames, Chapman, and Devers.
Yeah, but who made those decisions in the first place?
Yeah, that was Buster Posey.
I haven't heard him talked about at all so far this year. Like, the guys that he's brought in have not been very, very productive. Like, I ran this by Shasky, and I'll run it by you.
All right.
There's $110 million of the 180 right now tied up in these players. Chapman, Devers, Adames, Aris, Bator, Molly, and Hauser. They're worth 0 wins combined this season. If we're just looking at a baseline stat, they're worth 0 wins. That's a problem. When 70% of your roster for this year has been mediocre. And I get some guys have been better than others. Aris has been good. Chapman has been fine. He's a great defensive player, and he's had some big hits and big moments. But large in part, the dudes that Buster Posey has signed to big contracts, and by the way, for a few years, a couple of these players, they're not performing very well. And it makes me wonder, why, so Buster Posey gets blank checks, and he's spent a lot of money on a few particular players, mainly Chapman, Devers, and Adames. And those have been, because they're expected to be your guys, they've been a few of the biggest disappointments. I would say Devers more than the other two, but they've been big disappointments so far this year.
Yeah, and let's also be honest about Posey. He didn't get hired because he was one of the greatest Giants of all time. I think they saw more than just that. But the reality of the situation is when you hire Buster Posey, you give him a long leash because he's Buster Posey. I mean, he's going to, it's almost, maybe not to this extent, but hey, Steph Curry has become the general manager of the Golden State Warriors. Well, guess what? He's going to get a long leash. And because he is who he is, we're going to focus on aspects other than the roster construction, probably. That's just the way it goes because Posey's one of the all-time great Giant players. Well, it's just the way it is.
He's an all-time great player.
Yep.
He's a Hall of Fame player.
Yep.
He may very well be a first-ballot Hall of Fame talent. That has nothing to do with his decision-making as president of baseball operations, pardon me. That's a completely different job. And so far, he has not shown to be very good at it. Now, there's time, and he's got his first draft class that, we'll find out. There's supposed to be some more talent in the Giants system. It's going to take a few years, and we're going to figure that out. And you're going to be stuck. And this is also the kind of the stark reality. You're going to be stuck with Buster Posey. You're going to be stuck with Rafael Devers. You're going to get stuck with Adames, and you're going to be stuck with these guys. I was talking to someone yesterday who asked, well, how long do you give Posey? And I say, you got to give him at least 5 years. That's about as much time as it takes for a draft class to get through, to figure out if you have any players or not. Okay, so if you're giving them 5 years, these first 2 years have been underwhelming, I think, if not disappointing. And I guess they could make a run. They could make the playoffs this year. But to me, so far with what they've shown, by the way, also being largely healthy.
True.
A couple of the guys that have gone down that have been hurt, I would say the most productive one is Susac, who was a Rule 5 pick. You weren't even expecting a whole lot from. So Buster Posey, in his first year and a quarter, has been underwhelming. And if you got 5 years, it's like, all right, I need to see some sort of spark. I need to see it. And he's made heavy investments in these guys that it's going to be hard if you did want to get off of. It'd be really hard to do that.
I mean, Zaidi was here for what, 6 years?
Yeah. 18
through 24? So
6 or 7 years.
It's funny, when you said 5 years for Posey, I thought, boy, that's a long time. But that wouldn't even be as long as Zaidi had.
I mean, Zaidi probably bought himself a couple of years of 2021.
Right.
But to me, if you're hiring Buster Posey, again, and this is the thing with Vitello too, you hired 2 people for positions that they have zero experience in. So you have to give them a runway. Otherwise, what did you hire them for?
Well, it's just like Vitello. To me, you got 2 guys in positions where, they're both new, and you better be prepared to live with them for a while. Otherwise, if you're not prepared, it's kind of a catch-22. If you're not prepared to live with them for a while, then you're going to fire them early, which, how can you do that to guys that have no experience that you expected to grow on the job? Let's go to Steve. Steve's in Santa Rosa. Wants to talk Giants. Hey, Steve, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I'm really bummed about this team, but that interview your last guys did with Brett Boone really explained everything. It's all between their ears. And the big 3 that we're talking about, Chapman and Thomas, they need to get better or they need to be gone, especially Devers. I think Boston pulled the fast one on us and dumped it. He's finished. He can't hit anything over 90 miles an hour. I watch almost every game. You can see the speed of the pitches coming in. You can see the location of the pitches. They throw him a fastball right down the pipe. If it's over 90 miles an hour, he can't touch it. He's finished. Major league pitchers kill him. And, I hate to say that, but it's pretty obvious. And they got him for 8 years. It's going to be a disaster. Something's got to happen with him. He's just not a major league hitter. He sure ain't a major league hitter in that park, which I think is another big factor with the Giants. It's not a home run hitter's park.
Nope.
And none of them are home run hitters. And they're all swinging for the fence. Even Jung-Hoo Lee. You're not home run hitters. You're not going to be hitting 30, 40 home runs. There isn't anybody on the team that can do that, even Devers. So, face reality, guys. It's time to shorten up your swing, get base hits and doubles, and hope you don't strike out 500 times a season. They're a joke. And I'm disgusted with them, especially Devers. He is done, washed up.
Thanks, Steve.
Everybody's terrible.
What's funny is
he's not hitting well right now.
What's funny is and we don't maybe we don't do this in baseball as much, but there's nothing to talk about with Devers except his at bats. You know what I mean?
Well, he's supposed to be your best player, Steiny.
I guess what I'm saying is let's just Moses Moody. Okay, Moses Moody. He's a good 3-and-D guy. Great teammate, very professional. Clearly, everybody on the team likes him. fan favorite. Like what's Devers? We don't know anything about him, do we?
What are you talking about? He's a World Series champion who was one of the best hitters in the AL before he got to the Giants.
You think Giants fans know anything about Devers since he's gotten here?
That's not the point.
No,
the point is he's not the player he's been for the first 10 years or 9 years of his career.
Okay, so what I'm saying is Devers hasn't been around long enough to become a player that the fans can't stand.
Yes, he has.
I don't think the fans they can't stand him.
You see how much money he's owed?
I know, but you think Devers
he's going to be here for 8 more years?
You think the fans are like the last caller? I don't.
That are out on him forever? They're out on him right now. Well, and they have good reason to be.
Right. It's easy to be down on him right now, but my question is, like, we've built up no relationship with Devers, positive or negative, since he's been here. And I would ask
whose fault that is.
It's Devers' fault. It's Devers' fault. But what I'm getting at is, like, he has no. Okay, we learned about Adames last year. He had a terrible start, but through that whole last year, we're saying, you know what, though, the guy's real. Even when he struggled, he's the same guy. We know he's a leader. We know he's able to celebrate even when he's not playing well. He seems to be a real team player, upbeat. Like, all that is positive weight when a guy isn't playing well. But can somebody tell me any characteristic of Rafael Devers? Like, I don't know anything about him.
Well, and I would say you haven't been paying attention because in Boston, he was a dude.
Right. I get all that. I'm talking about his personality. And when he gets here, and okay, you followed him from afar. You're a baseball connoisseur. You knew all about him. But what have we gotten to know about Devers in the last year?
Not much, because he hasn't done anything worth mentioning. Also, but
he doesn't talk a lot either.
I don't care about his personality. I care if he can hit a fastball.
I get that. But what I'm asking you is, does the fact that we had, like, who is this guy playing in our hometown not hitting? You know what I mean? Like, we don't. It's like he's not even in the community. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he's kind of an introvert. He's a quieter guy. He's somebody he's never been a clubhouse cancer. I think that he was sort of misconstrued on the way out in Boston. But he's someone who keeps to himself. He plays baseball and he goes home, and that's all well and good. And I'm not criticizing him for being quiet. I don't care about the person that Rafael Devers is. And to be fair, I think that by all accounts, it seems like he's a nice guy. His teammates like him. He's supportive and was last year when he was doing well. I don't think he's a bad dude, but there are bad players all across sports who still show up and perform 162 games a year or close to it. There are guys who are great guys who don't perform, and those guys don't generally make the kind of money that Rafael Devers makes. Buster Posey acquired him last year to take this team to the next level. And all I know is, number one, that hasn't happened. And in fact, they've actually regressed. They have had a sub 500 record with Rafael Devers on this baseball team. And while last year I would point to a lot of other factors and say, well, Devers, he still walked a lot. He still ended up with 20 home runs in 90 games for you. But I actually think that Devers is a direct reflection of those problems you talked about with their offense, which is he isn't walking. So he's not even consistently getting on base for you. He's got 6 walks and 120 plate appearances. That ain't good. He strikes out a bunch, more than one time a game. And he has 2 home runs. So he doesn't hit homers, he doesn't get on base, and he doesn't even put the ball in play. Like, that's your problem right now. And I hate to bring it to Rafael Devers' doorstep, but when you are the poster child for, Buster Posey's aggression, that's where blame's going to fall.
I get all that. I was just listening to Shasky and Lubman today, and Shasky was just bringing up how it just doesn't seem like Devers is feeling any pressure. It doesn't feel like, the fan base. I don't think the fan base is like killing him or Posey. I think they're kind of waiting patiently. And what I'm getting at is I think they've treated Devers pretty fairly considering how bad he's been. And one of the reasons why is because it's hard to know what to make of him. he's obviously not a bad guy, but we don't know anything about him. So it's like I'm kind of hands off on Devers because I don't even know who the guy is.
Well, do you think you know who Jimmy Butler is?
He feels like a rental.
Jimmy Butler is?
Do I feel like I know who Jimmy Butler is? Yeah, probably more than Devers.
And why is that?
Well, to my way of thinking, because probably I know Butler like you know Devers in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, but I think Butler's made himself more available. But for the most part, I think Jimmy Butler is more reclusive than a lot of other players on the Warriors. And it's because he just got here. But that didn't matter last season because he provided immediate impact. He was an immediately beneficial player that helped elevate this team. In fact, he got him to the second round, helped get him to the second round of the playoffs. Rafael Devers has not had anywhere close to the impact that Jimmy Butler did. And that's why I think there's frustration, is because you talked about Moses Moody or someone in that category that we know. Moses Moody is not the guy that you're looking to help elevate others. Rafael Devers is supposed to do that, and he simply hasn't, especially this season.
Okay, well then it feels like he's gotten a pass since he's been here.
I would agree.
Oh, okay. That's kind of what I'm saying. And
it's built into the nature of the sport. It's a large sample size sport. And I think that last season he had a better year than people give him credit for individually, though the team wasn't very good. But this year, like again, Stoney. Okay, so last season he hit 236 with the Giants. Okay, you still got on base. You still gave your teammates an opportunity to produce runs around you, and he hit 20 home runs in 90. That's not nothing. Did he have an all-time season last year? No, but he was still pretty productive for you. This year he has been a negative player, and he's been value-wise one of the worst position players in Major League Baseball. And I don't think it's more complicated than that. He's got to be better. He probably will be, but it's been 30 games. That's not a small amount. If you're telling me 1 series, 2 series, 3 series, sure. But we're coming up in the end of April, and he's got an OPS below 600. That ain't good.
Well, if you look at his last 2 years, or if you look at his Giants numbers with just from last year and this year,